you doing?
Oh, this is fun.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I know we were supposed to get together last time I was in London.
Yes.
And that would have been a whole hot mess because I was still getting my technical videography game going. But no, I appreciate you coming down because you don't live in London anymore, but you come back and forth. So I appreciate you coming down and sitting here with me and having dinner because I am hungry.
Ain't we all?
Ain't we all?
Yeah, so I moved out of London about a year ago now. I came to London initially for work. I moved here for work and I worked in this Christian organization for 3 years. And I never really settled in London. And then I met my husband. And then we just wanted kind of a quieter, life. And so we moved out of London to Warwickshire, to a town in Warwickshire. So yeah, I still work here, not for the same Christian charity, but for somewhere else. So I'm pretty much here every week anyway.
Right.
But yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit the new exciting position that you have now.
Yes, so I joined the Equiano Project. This is probably my 3rd month now. And I'm just, I'm so grateful to be part of this organization. I've been sort of doing stuff on my own social media, kind of speaking out, like you do, challenging certain narratives that we found quite problematic when it came to, race and identity and, culture. So I've kind of worked with some organizations before and, I have, no regrets or anything, but I was really looking for a place that had a more nuanced, balanced kind of approach to some things.
Right.
I wouldn't say apolitical because, like many of these things, we kind of have to play the game of politics sometimes, unfortunately.
Right.
Speak the language of the times kind of thing. So that's inescapable. But I didn't want a deeply political organization, right? And so, the Inaya Folarin, the founder, she reached out to me. I actually applied to work for them before and it probably wasn't the right time. And then she reached out again and I was like, yes, please, I'm ready. So I kind of manage their content. We deal with race, culture, identity, but like I said, more on a level of universalism, trying to find that common humanity,
right.
And go for it, go at it that way. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Before we get into the politics, what'd you get?
What did I get?
Yeah, what is it?
So this is mixed grill.
Okay.
So you've got lamb shish, chicken shish, and I'm guessing beef, I hope. Yeah, so, yeah. What you having? Falafel?
I got a falafel wrap. Now, I didn't think it would be this big. This thing is like a snake. I'm just like, I don't know if I could finish all this, but...
I love the way Americans say some words. Falafel. It's a falafel. Or falafel, like some people say.
We mess up things all the time. So you were playing something earlier before we started recording in the conversation about race. And it's so interesting to me because quite literally, I'm seeing the American concept of race being injected into a British society that has a completely different history and a historical context of how most Black British people and why they even exist here. And for the most part, like you said, most are first, second generation here, so they're immigrants to this country, versus the existence of slave trade and coming from that particular situation, which For a lot of Black Americans, our lineage is far deeper than many white Americans who are here. For them, some of them are first, second generation in America. So I think it's very interesting because you guys are trying to you're trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. You know, it's like, how is there Black culture explained in a particular way when I'm from Nigeria, they're from Ghana, they're from Jamaica. Yeah, we all have darker tone, but we're completely different cultures and we believe different things. We have different outlooks, and we're coming into a British society which is different, and we're bringing our family lineage and how we see the world into that as well. And I just feel bad for you guys sometimes because you have to deal with our bullshit.
Yeah, you just put it all on us. I agree with that. And it is sad that a lot of, this is imported from the US. I will say that, yes, I love what you said, that we are trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense.
Right.
I would say, I would go even further, and I would say that those in America are also trying to make sense of something that is actually very senseless. It doesn't make sense. This concept of race in itself, we all know that it has no sort of scientific biological basis, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a reality. There's a difference. There's a distinction there. So yes, it's not real in the scientific sense of how a lot of people think it is, that, there's a genetic, biological reason why race exists. And we know that that's not true, right? There's minimal genetic variation, between the races. Right. We know that. However, that doesn't mean that it hasn't become our reality now. Yeah. So yes, those of us in Britain, that have moved here from different parts of the world, and all of a sudden, what didn't exist to us is now a big reality, right? In terms of, not just in terms of people saying, oh, we have to experience racism. No, just in terms of identity, right? Right. In our countries, race wasn't a thing, right? Differences exist, but it didn't come in the form of race. And then we move over here, and that is the thing. But I would also expand out to any other society that believes that race is a thing. And, they try to make meaning or give meaning to things that shouldn't have meaning. In terms of what blackness has come to mean and what so-called whiteness have come to mean. These things are not just in terms of descriptors, right? They now have ideological, political backings to them or meanings to them, if I should say. Right. And I think furthermore, yes, we don't have, I always say that the UK and the US, they have different but not separate histories in terms of race. A lot of, the stuff that happened in the US, the concoction of the concept of race came from, UK. So unfortunately, I know this is a hard truth, but it did come from a lot of the Enlightenment thinkers as well, who believed in, you had, not just the UK, but in all parts of Europe, Germany, Sweden, and all things like that. If you read some less favourable work of people like Immanuel Kant, who is seen as the father of moral philosophy, he actually didn't believe that blacks were within that category, or in terms of, he did at one point, I'm not saying this, summarise his whole thinking, but there was at one point that he actually didn't think that black people were capable of making moral decisions or being capable of morality, because he thought that black people at that time were sort of less than humans. And it is ironic because he is the founder of or he's seen as the father of that, but that is a less known and a darker side of him. So I'm saying all that to say that the invention of race isn't just pertinent to the US, right? It has spread, all throughout the world, and I think that's why we're seeing this kind of, I would say, desperation in the UK. I can't speak for other societies where we're seeing these kind of mini uprisings, like in France, and South Africa's had its issues, and these multiracial societies. I can't really speak for them, but I feel like in the UK there's this kind of a bubbling of a dissatisfaction that actually, no, we're not importing America's stuff. It's here. Listen to us. We also had Bristol, boycotts and our protests and our civil rights and Notting Hill and that. Like, we have our own story. So I'm saying all that to say that I think people here feel unheard, and I think that's why there's this push to hear, listen to our story and hear our story. But I will always go back to the point that, the aim now shouldn't be to, okay, let's sort of dig up the dirt of the past, and it should be, no, how can we learn and move away from this completely? That's what I care about.
I agree with you. Like, the way I see myself is I'm Adam. It's basically how I move. Like, the racial component comes like much farther down. And it's not something that, I think about it more often than I normally would in my life because of what I do, So I'm in a political world and in a cultural world where I see stuff and then people say stuff. And so, yes, I am more in recognition of what I look like. But I really don't care to that extent. What's interesting is that certain people, like, it's their prerogative. They want to see race first for them. Like, my identity, I'm a black man first. They move their life in that particular way, and that's fine. That's their business. Like, you do whatever you want. You can see yourself as a bear first. I don't know. You do whatever you want. But for me, I just don't, because it's not the most important thing in my life. And I think what ends up happening is when you say stuff like that, people think like you hate being black or you're trying to diminish your identity and all this. It's not really about that. It's something that it's not really that important. What matters to me is someone, and speaking for myself, my morality, how I treat people, am I a good father, am I a good husband, all these different things. Those are the things that matter to me. How authentically black or whatever even that means, which is completely arbitrary, right? Because someone's version of black is different than another person's version of black. And I just learned a long time ago, like, to not play the game. Like, I don't care. If someone calls me a coon, Uncle Tom, I really don't care. I care about what people close to me actually think. I care about what they think more so. But I care about what I think about myself and how I see myself. And am I comfortable with who I am? Yeah. And I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. I'm not, despite what some people might say, you're trying to appease the white man. I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. I've been accused of, for lack of a better term, shucking and jiving for white people and stuff like that because I didn't say the exact thing that they want me to say. But at the same time, I've called out people for saying legit racist shit. And
I've seen that. I've seen some of that, yeah.
And it's not because I'm black, it's because it's wrong. Like, you shouldn't be doing, like, right now we have the whole Israel and everything. Like, that stuff is wrong, some of the stuff that people are saying. Do people get false labels? Absolutely. Do we call people racist because they say something slightly offensive or slightly politically incorrect, or they just don't know that they're saying it wrong? Like, do we throw those terms at people? Yeah, we do. Or do we just do it as a general attack because we don't like that person for whatever reason? Yeah, that happens all the time. So there are false labels, but there are legit racists out there. I've talked to them.
Me too.
I've talked to them, and I've pointed out their flaws. Because for me, like, being a racist is illogical. That's how I see it. Like I've read so much. I listened to the quote unquote arguments that people who are racist say as to validate why they are this way, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because they purposefully ignore things, right? So in my book, I talk about race crime statistics in the United States. But I talk about it for a very particular reason. It is not to say that all black people are criminals, right? Or we're just 1 second away from being animals and hurting other people. That's not the point of me talking about that. It is to talk about an existence of a culture that does exist. That is not the majority, but it does exist, and it is a problem. It is a hyper reality for certain people who are black within the United States. And it is exaggerated. So like, I remember someone talking to me about in Minneapolis, they were having like a whole bunch of car thefts and carjackings. Come to find out, it was like less than 10 people who were doing it throughout the city, right? So, but the carjacking numbers were high, the car breaking numbers were high, and everybody's like, we got a huge problem. Really, they had a huge problem with it. Very small amount of people that were committing a crime. So what these people do is they use race crime statistics in their favor, right? So then I say, what percentage of black people commit crimes? They never answer that question because they don't know and they don't want to know. And I say, and they'll say something blatantly like, black people X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I've never been arrested. I've never gone to jail. Well, you're a statistical anomaly, right? You're the exception, but, so it's, whenever you point out something that's illogical to them, they want to go right back to that illogical point. So that's why I'm not worried about racists, because they're not.
So is it like when people say black people are 13% of the population and they do 50% of the crime, and it's like, well, that entire 13% doesn't.
Right.
Right. Okay. I get what you mean. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like if they wanted to say it properly, which is not even properly, you could say the 13% demographic, that would be more accurate, but it's not even that. Because we know the vast majority are men. And I think of that 13%, which I think edges on 14% these days, but I think it's about 6% men. I think there are more black women than black men. So the majority of that are coming from black men. So it's really a 6% demographic. So it's even smaller if they wanted to be accurate. But they say 50% of the crime. Well, how much crime is there, right? And then they ignore regions, right? They ignore where people live, right? Why aren't there massive murders and gang-related shootings happening in middle of nowhere, Idaho? Well, there's no black people there. That's why these black things that you guys are saying these are black things that black criminals are doing, well, they don't live there, right? So when they show like in a city, which a lot of black people live in urban city centers, especially the larger cities in the United States, when a white person is being robbed or a white person is being attacked or whatever, they're like, see, they're coming after. No, they just happen to live there. And by the way, they do that to everybody. See, criminals aren't that selective. They look for people who are targets, who are easy targets. And sometimes it's the person that lives across the street from them. And sometimes it's that random lady who's walking down the street. But they don't want to see that. Just like how I point out the amount of propaganda that exists. So we know that, let's say 13%, 50% of the crime. We'll run with that. But that means that 50% is not committed by black people.
Yeah.
How come nearly, in the right-wing circles, how come nearly 100% of the crime propaganda is of black people?
I got you.
And I point that out, and they can't grasp that. I was like, you guys don't even see that. You don't even see how that works. We know it's not 100%, but nearly 100% of it features Black people. You don't see anything weird about that? You would notice it was something weird if it was about Trump, right? All the bad media is always about Trump. You notice that, but you can't see it because why? It's not you, right? It's not, you're not part of that demographic that they're trying to lump you in, right? But when it does become the demographic they're trying to, then all of a sudden you see the pattern, right? But they love to say, see the pattern when it's somebody else. So that is the racist, the racist blind spot. And unfortunately, that racist blind spot exists in a minority, not majority, in a minority of people who exist on the right. Just like on the left, there is a racist blind spot with how condescending and ridiculous the people who want to become Black people's saviors because they can't do for themselves. They can't see how that's racist as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a lot of blind spots.
Yeah, and I think it's the inconsistency as well. So obviously you have, I think this is one of the saddest thing about all this race awakening and race consciousness and all this stuff that, really, I wouldn't say it started with BLM, but it definitely, that exacerbated it a lot more, right? So what is happening is what I said would happen. It's not pushback because there's pushback and then there's just outright racism again. That's why I didn't want to, I never would have played that game, but that's why I was strongly against people playing this game of racial politics because that game will be played back on you, right? That game would be played back on you. Today you are today's victim, but tomorrow you'll be the oppressor. The cycle just keeps repeating itself over and over again. And if you have this culture of demonizing a certain group, be it white men or whatever, it will come to a point that you will see that pushback. Right. At the moment in the UK, I don't know how it is in the US, but the statistically, the ones at the bottom are white working class boys, right? White working class males, and the narrative keeps going that it's not them, it's Black people or anyone sort of with darker skin. And we're demonizing a whole group, and you're telling this disenfranchised group that they're privileged. There's going to be that pushback. There's going to be that, that uproar. It's going to bubble over. And I'm saying all that to say that that's exactly what I'm seeing. With recently, and that's why I made a decision that I will only sort of work or comment for people who have the same values of balance and nuance. When I say balance and nuance, it doesn't mean everything you say has to be balanced and nuanced kind of thing. We have strong positions. I have strong views. There's certain points I will say what needs to be said, but that's not going to be the song I'm going to sing, for the rest of my life. For example, I'm very clear that I stand against victimhood and oppression politics and all these things. But that doesn't mean that I'm against Black people, and anytime I see a situation and, it's kind of a conflict or confrontation involving a Black person, they're automatically in the wrong. I am not like that. And I had to make that clear in case people got the wrong idea. And if you just deviate slightly, and that's why when people say you're conservative, I'm like, I can't be because, if I have a little bit of a different view of what, they believe or accept, then the racism comes, right? And I've dealt with that. So, but that's what I'm trying to say is that I get that. A lot of people, think that they're fighting, you know, the wokeness and being anti-woke and free speech and, you know, and all these things, but you end up playing the same game of those you hate. So, or those you claim to be fighting against.
Right.
So I just think there has to be a lot more care and, you know, like you mentioned, it happens on both sides, you know, people using statistics where it favors them, you know. But yeah, I completely agree with that. It's sad because the aim should be to be coming towards an understanding, you know, and what I'm seeing now is just the opposite. Like recently we had in the UK, like some educational resources for children showing, you know, who apparently was black in the UK, you know, the Romans and all these things were apparently black, that kind of language. And again, what that does is you have that knee-jerk reaction, and it doesn't stop at that knee-jerk reaction. It becomes something more sinister. So it's not just a thing of debunking what's being said. It now becomes something else. So it's not just, okay, no, they weren't. This is what it is. It becomes, no, they weren't because they couldn't have been, because they're, you know, then all that genetic racial politics happens all again. So, yeah.
And the one, and actually, I noticed this. This is good. Even though it was a snake,
You did well with it.
I did finish it. That's how hungry I was. It was a travel day. I've noticed this especially. There's a brand of, what's the word I want to put? There's a brand of people who are on the political right in the UK. I will preface by saying it is not everybody who's on the right in the UK. It's not even everybody on the right in the US. But they like to throw the term cultural enrichment as a mock, right? So whenever someone who is black or brown does something that is wrong, legitimately wrong, it's cultural enrichment. Oh, I see cultural enrichment is at it again, right? Look what they're doing to our culture, huh? I guess we're being enriched. It's that mocking kind of nature, and I think the people who do it the most know what they're doing. But I think that there are people who are getting propagandized to start really seeing things in a very uncomfortable and unfortunate way, because they don't show the dirt of people. You live in the UK. Do we think that there are zero people who are white who commit crimes, that break into people's houses, that steal cars, that really, like, it's that kind of thing. It's like you are purposefully putting a blind eye to, let's say, your people. Let's just say you use that from a racial context. Your people's bullshit too, right? Just so you can make some sort of point. Now, if you want to say that, hey, we need to have better measures when it comes to immigration coming to this country. I don't like it when people from places that might be hostile to the United Kingdom are all of a sudden coming here, and now we're using our resources to put them in hotels indefinitely and doing all these things, and no one's doing enough to stop it. It does not mean that I'm against immigration. I have plenty of friends who are immigrants. Your family, you're yourself, and you're in this country. So it is not to be anti-immigrant. It is to say that if we're going to have immigrants, we're going to have a system, we need to make sure we enforce it and do everything to protect it. That's completely different than what these people are doing. These people are seeing a problem and taking 1, 2, 3 extra steps further and saying that they almost make it sound like these people are rats, and look what kind of trash they're bringing to our country. Yeah, that's the tone. Yeah, right. rather than like I got into this as I'm talking to you, it made me think about it. I got into this back and forth, and I stood on that hill, and I didn't care if people who followed me didn't agree with me. I stood on the hill of, there was a man who was on, I think he was the London Underground. Oh no, I'm sorry. I can't remember if it was in London or Germany. I can't remember. But I knew it was in Europe. The man had like a hot plate and he was eating food.
I think that was Germany.
It was Germany, right?
Like a Nigerian dish.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw your comments too, and I completely agreed.
And I'm just like, looks good. And they're like, that's what these people are bringing. This is it. I was like, the man is eating food. Let's say you had some sort of case, if someone is breaking the law, you know, they talk about the Pakistan rape gangs and stuff like that. Okay, the man is eating food. Do you hear, you guys? You guys are upset that a man is eating food in public. You know how many people in the States walk around with McDonald's and just stuff their faces, and no one ever says, "Look at the culture that they're bringing." Like no one gives a shit. But the man is actually eating a proper dish. He doesn't have a wrapper, McDonald's, Burger King, and he's slobbering. He has a proper dish, and he's eating up. And I was like, looks good.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that I would ever take offense if it smelled bad.
Some of the food can smell strong.
Some of it can smell bad.
Oh my God.
And then I'll be like, all right, maybe you have a point.
Yeah, I think I get it, but then as I'm thinking, I'm just wondering what would I do if I see someone like with a whole plate of rice and stew on the tube. I think I would probably say something. But I think I wouldn't essentialize it.
Right.
So I will find it odd, like if someone had maybe not rice and stew, but maybe what else? Like mutton soup or something. It's not like there's finger kind of food you eat on the go. But if it's kind of a home cooked meal, I would see that and say something or think something. But I wouldn't essentialize that and say, well, look at them or look at that, and that's where the line stops for me. Because I went to the Battle of Ideas event yesterday, and I went to a talk. Francis Foster was there. One of the guys from trigonometry made some really good points. And the topic in question was about antisocial behaviour in the UK and what's causing it. The theme was like Mizzy and remember all the nonsense that he did. So it was kind of talking about antisocial behaviour in general. And a lady, she said, well, is it to do with multiculturalism and all these people coming here with completely different cultures and, you know, I've been a victim of catcalling and, you know, then they vandalize. And I'm like, really? A lot of the problems I've had in some of the bad areas I've lived in involved also white people, you know, and I was just thinking, why essentialize that and make it seem like it's because they're from a different culture? Bad people do bad things. And that's the principle I will always stand for, and which comes to my point about people thinking that I'm going to be just against black people or whatever. No, I'm against wrong. And it's not just a certain group of people that do wrong. Just like I will defend to the death anyone that essentializes a white person or their history and tries to say that they're oppressors or they're thieves or rapists or torturers or whatever. Right. I wouldn't accept that. So there's no way in hell I'm going to accept that being done to any other group.
Right.
Right? So, yeah.
So I call that in-group versus out-group. When it's in-group, you're blind to certain things. Why? Because you're part of that group. So in-group, you tend to notice the positive versus the negative that exists within that group. However, the out group, well, you really notice their fucked up shit. Their positives, well, you know, that happens once in a while. That's an anomaly. But they have a lot of negatives, right? Let's say a black activist can say, well, white people are really racist. Yeah. And they have deep-seated hatred for us. Oh, really? All of them? All right, well, do you know any black people who feel that way? Because right now, what you're saying sounds exactly like what you're criticizing them for. Mm-hmm. Can't see that. They can only see the negative. And it's okay if they see the negative to them, because it's someone else. It's the other group, right? So I think that's the type of issue, and the danger of the identity politics is that it forces people to have that in-group versus out-group reaction to things. Like I've said this before, in the US, I've been around white people my entire life. It is weird for a white person to call themselves white. It's unusual. Not that it doesn't happen or has never happened, but it's unusual. If you're having a conversation about their identity and you are forcing them to choose like what their identity, how they see themselves, I'm Irish, Italian, Polish, you go down the list. Why? Because for many of them, they're second generation, maybe third generation Americans in the States, and they actually do have some sort of lineage, or one side of the family is Italian, the other side of the family is Irish, and they got together. So like, they've always identified with like a foreign nation. But it's weird for them to identify as white, to call themselves white. It's very strange. That is a weird new trend that I started seeing, especially since George Floyd. This white identity upholding. So you have the leftists who says, as a white person, I need to do better, right? So now they're acknowledging that they're white. So it was weird to hear. And then they say, white supremacy is a problem, and white people are the problem. And so the reaction to it is these people who on Monday said, I'm an Italian and an eighth Irish and a quarter of this and a quarter of that. All of a sudden we're like, I fit into that demographic. They're attacking me.
Got you.
Now I'm part of the in group. Now I have to fight the out group. The out group is perpetuating all this stuff. It doesn't matter actually that it's coming from white liberals or white progressives that are actually saying it. They're now forcing other white people who never saw themselves on that list of identity, white at the top. Now white is at the top because they're being attacked. And it's unfortunate, and this is where like propaganda really works. And I try to every so often point out, like, you guys are being propagandized. Like, as much as the political right thinks that the mainstream media lies and all these narratives are wrong, they believe the narrative that black people really truly are these far leftists who wear BLM shirts all the time. I'm like, no, we are not. No, we are not. Not even just for me, personally speaking. Just like being around black people and just talking to them. Have you ever, I just want to be like, culturally speaking, have you been around black people and actually talked to them? The mumbo jumbo that you hear from the black leftists, they don't talk like that. That's a specific, those are the college educated, upper middle class, upper class black people who get even further indoctrinated when they go to these schools. And they come back and philosophize race in America. And they got their African American studies degrees and all this bullshit. And they want to now philosophize. See, you're just too blind to what's going on, sister. You know? And they talk to you condescending, just like white leftists would talk to you condescending, right? But they believe that that's how black people are, right? So they believe that narrative. And I'm just like, guys, you're being propagandized. Even the very outlets, the very mainstream outlets that you criticize, you think is full of shit and they lie about everything, you believe them on that though.
Yeah, I never get that.
Yeah.
The media's lying to us, but let's believe the next thing that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the whole aim of, all this racial awakening, isn't it? It's to kind of make everyone, see their race or be conscious of their race. And that's what I was trying to say in the beginning, that there's nothing good. I just want one compelling good thing that comes from seeing yourself in a racial lens. I just want one benefit of that. There's none. Literally, there's no benefit to seeing yourself in a racial lens in terms of walking through life, just with your race at the forefront of your humanity. There's so much more interesting things about yourself to do with that. And it doesn't bring anyone together. It just alienates us. Why do I need to relate to you as a, I was watching a video. It's a video that went viral actually. And I don't know what happened because they didn't show the full clip as it always does. But I think there was like a problem with a black person and someone who looked white. And he asked her, are you white? And she said, no. She looked white, in all fairness. And then he said, well, what are you? And she said, I'm Brazilian. Have you watched that?
No.
And he started laughing, or he kind of made a confused face. And everyone in the comments were like, that's so ridiculous, that's stupid, she's an idiot. But you have to be, this is how that means something to her, right. Brazilian. With that phrase, comes a culture, a history, a tradition, family, right? Customs. White does not, white, it's such a vague thing, And the only meaning it has is the meaning you give to it, because there is no other meaning of that apart from, as Thomas Chatterton Williams said, it's in terms of oppression, it's in terms of power. These colorized racial terminology, it's only in relation to power and oppression and stuff. It's nothing to do with culture. And I understand they have black culture and all these things, which I think, especially in the UK, that needs to be made more specific, because black culture doesn't mean what people think or what people want it to mean. We had an event, the Mayor of London made an event in Trafalgar Square called Black on the Square, and it was celebrating black culture. Which black culture? Whose? Please be more specific.
Right.
Because rice and peas is not my culture, or reggae or whatever. I'm not stereotyping, but that's not my culture. Right. That's not my history. That's not my background. If you want to talk about okra soup and egusi soup and, Afrobeats or Fela Kuti and all these things, that's, even if you want to specify it more, then let's talk about Igbo culture. Do you know? So I'm just trying to say that these things don't mean anything, and that's why there's such a disconnect with some people, white or black, because they're like, okay, I'm white, let's play the game. But it's so empty. Right. And I think that's why a lot of people feel, weird, even in the UK, because it's like they don't have anything tangible, that they can relate with. What you should be doing is looking at, your own history or your traditions, because that's not white. If you want to talk about British, traditional history, or Welsh, or Cardiff is in Wales, or Irish, or Scottish. Right. These mean something. Whiteness and blackness don't mean anything. So it's like what I was saying in the beginning, we're forcing people to find meaning in things that don't mean anything, that don't mean much in terms of, identity and filling that hole that everyone has. It doesn't mean anything, apart from, anyway, yeah.
I was actually going to say, one thing I've noticed is people who have the in-group versus out-group mentality, they always attribute the best, the very best of the in-group to being them. So, like the people I would call like basically white supremacists, like those people, they'll always say stuff like, we built these great architecture. We built this magisterial culture, and I'm like, you built? You didn't do shit, brother. Like, you can barely tie your shoes. You want to attribute Michelangelo as just being generally white culture, so you can grab apart one of the greatest artists in history as you, like, that. No, that's you? No, you don't get to do that. Like, you don't get to do that. That'd be like me being like, we were the best basketball players. Like, I wasn't. I could barely dribble a ball.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to attribute the very best of whatever you're in group as being like, you just one step behind. Like, I could have been LeBron if I practice a couple times a day. Like, but I see that all the time, and that part is hilarious to me because especially for people who point at like legit amazing individuals and whatever skill set that they have, and then you look at the person who's like, man, we was like, no, not you. You weren't anywhere close. And if you were back at that time, you would have been a peasant and never even been anywhere close to the greatness of that individual. And you over here being like, see, me, Michelangelo, Leonardo, we got a lot in common. Like, no, you don't. So I see that often. That part is funny to me.
Yeah. That's one of the worst things I hate about collectivism, because it's especially that, and then even the thing of sort of taking the victory of your group, right? Not just past, but even present day. And when it comes to the bad things, then that's the individual. So I was watching a video, and it was about a black woman, black female pilot, you know, and it was a thing of, oh, you know, we up, like the comments, like, we're doing things.
Black excellence.
Black excellence. And it's like, mate, that's her doing it. That's her going places, you know. And I'm saying that to say that it's actually a big problem, and it can be a big barrier in the so-called black community, whatever that means, because people are not striving to be great for themselves, you know. And even when they judge other black people through that lens of, well, what are they doing for us? I listened in to I think Jay-Z was speaking on Twitter. I think I was the recording I listened to, not live. And he was getting a lot of hate from his so-called community because I think he was pushing back against, don't quote me on it, but this is from what I gathered because I didn't hear everything. And he was kind of pushing back about this rhetoric of taxing the rich. You know, and he's like, what do you mean? Look, we're just making it. So he's trying to speak both languages. I know he's, you know, quite an individual kind of person. You can't make it that far with kind of that collective mindset. I think he knows what he's doing. But just to kind of, like most black celebrities and stuff, they want to stay in that language, and you know, we're just getting somewhere, we're just getting things now, and now they want to tax the rich, no, and all these, he was saying all these things, but he thought he would get the support, you know, and he got a lot of pushback of, what do you mean what are you doing for the black community, what are you doing for us? And you saw this hatred of sort of capitalism and, you know, and all these things again. So it's just like, people have to understand that life is an individual journey, you know, and it's good to give back, and it's good to, you know, share whatever your resources, but you can't be accountable to save an entire, you know, group of people, right? That's not even your responsibility. you know? So yeah, it was just this thing of, you know, trying to take claim and glory in someone else's work and achievements and riches just because they have the same skin color as you. It's so odd. You know, I know certain historical facts about my own personal history in Nigeria and the good and evil that's been done by my so-called people, but I don't share in their victories or their shame. It's a learning, it's a point of reference, but to be personally attached to that, you know, and claim it as part of my own as Ada, that's just really odd for me. So it's like what you mentioned, these people, oh, we painted and built. It's like, what are you talking about? And it's that kind of football game delusion of, yeah, we won. Or and it's like, you and your sofa, mate.
See, all right, I will say this in defense of sports.
Okay, here we go.
That's an acceptable delusion.
In-group, out-group mentality here.
That is an acceptable, because it hurts no one. It hurts no one if I'm just like, we lost.
Have you seen some violence after some football games in Tottenham and Arsenal? I think
until it hurts someone. Yeah. For the most part. Yeah. I will say this: the way you guys see sports in the UK, I'm speaking general, just what I know, way more serious.
You think?
Yeah.
I've seen some baseball kind of drama. No, not
football.
Really.
Maybe football, like American football.
Yeah.
But that's usually because they're drunk.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not because it's not usually because like, oh, my team is kicking your ass.
Okay.
And we also don't separate each other.
So in the game, everyone sits everywhere.
Everybody sits everywhere.
Interesting. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah. So if you keep that in mind, for us, we're all like Cowboys next to Giants fans.
Oh, okay.
And we don't have that much violence. We don't take it that serious. Like, you guys, well, no, we gotta separate them.
They're serious here.
They're serious. Actually, it reminds me, are you familiar with Argentina Boca Juniors?
No.
No? Okay. So there's Boca Juniors and River Plate. So there are two teams in Buenos Aires. And they have this strong hatred for each other. It got so bad, I can't remember how many years ago it was. It got so bad that when they play each other, there are no away fans.
Oh.
They're not allowed to have away fans at all.
Wow.
So when you see them play, if it's at Boca Juniors, the entire arena is Boca Juniors fans.
Wow.
They're not allowed because it would cause so much violence, riots, and all types of craziness will go on. They take it way more seriously than you guys.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But that kind of brings me to purpose. I kind of feel like the people who really lean on stuff like that, it's like they have no purpose.
I agree.
And I guess I've always been trying to strive for some sort of purpose. Like for me, like what am I going to do? I've just never saw, what are they going to do for me? Yeah. That kind of mentality, I've never really had that.
I feel ashamed and embarrassed and just like, well...
What are you doing for us?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean, what am I doing for you all? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Like, but here's the thing. They have no idea what that conceptually even looks like.
Yeah.
It's just an emotional feeling. Yeah. Like, if Jay-Z gave Howard University, HBCU, I don't know, $10 million. Oh, he's doing stuff for us. But you don't go to Howard. And it's going to a very specific group of people. Like, is that it? Like,
it's optics. It's optics.
It's optics. Like, I don't know. It's all. That's why I say the entire game is all arbitrary. It's emotional. You have no idea.
100%.
No idea. So at that point, I'm out. I'm out the game.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to appease anybody. I'm trying to be a good person. I'm trying to do what's right. And if it helps Black people, great. If it
whatever that means.
Whatever. If it helps white people, great. I'm just trying to do what's right, and I'm trying to be consistent, because if it's wrong for white people to judge Black people with things that they didn't necessarily do, or that particular black person had nothing to do with, then it's wrong if I do that for white people, right? It's wrong if you do it with Hispanic people or Jewish people, anybody. That, to me, at least that what I was taught, was that that act is wrong. The act, not because, oh, the person who's being attacked is of a inferior status, and no, I was taught that that act is wrong. So I just don't do that. Generally speaking, I do not do that when it comes to other people. I might joke, we all joke, but I don't take that seriously. I don't attribute all this, all that. I stay away from that stuff because I think that's wrong. I don't want it done to me. Yeah. Because it would be wrong. So, you know, I try to be very specific because I don't want people to think that what I am talking about is lumping everybody together. Like, even as much as we're talking about like the people in Twitter Spaces. Yeah. What are you going to do for us? I know that is a very specific group of people who talk like that. And I don't talk to those people. But I know that is not the majority of black people who talk like that. I've talked about like how my extended family is a mixture of working class people. I have a cousin who's a lawyer. I have a couple cousins who are lawyers. Like, it's just a mixed bag. And we all get together and we all love each other. And none of us are like that. None of us are like that. And sometimes we talk about race, right? And we're different age brackets and groups where we have different experiences. My older cousins, they may have actually experienced some stuff back in the 70s and the 80s. They may have, but their experience is different than mine. For me, that's a sign of progress. But I don't say, oh, you're wrong. Like, no, they may actually have gone through something. I don't know. I wasn't there with them. You know, just like they're not there with me to see, like, actually, my life has been pretty good. Negative experiences from people from other races have been pretty low. So I don't hold any animosity towards people because that was my life. So, but I know those people is a very specific minority of people who's like, why isn't Jay-Z wagging the finger? But they can't tell you what Jay-Z could do that would make them happy. Arbitrarily, Jay-Z throw money at whatever that looks like it's helping someone. Whether it actually helps anybody is a different story. They don't really care. As long as it looks like, or as long as you give someone a shout out, right? And to me, that's all superficial nonsense.
It is, and without a purpose, nothing will ever be enough, right? Nothing will ever be the thing. You know, I'm sure you've heard these questions. Well, when is it enough? When are we going to be a post-racial society then, or whatever? And you know, I always say, I think it's when you have the same quantity of, you know, this group in this space, which is pretty much impossible, given just the difference in demographic percentage in the UK and the US. You know, black people are 3% here. You know, ethnic minorities are 14% in general. You are not going to have the same number in every single space. It's just impossible. But let's say that happens. I guarantee you that that's not going to be enough. For example, if you look at media representation and the thing before of, we need more on-screen representation. Now we're actually overrepresented, you know, in the media. Well, we need to be in the top. We need to be in all the senior positions then. That will happen like it happened in the governmental space. Why don't we have a woman in power? Happened. Why don't we have ethnic minority in power? It happened. Well, they're not the right kind of ethnic minority anyway. Right. You know, and the thing is, it's not because they are the right or they're the wrong kind. It's because they are not there for you. They are there to do a job. You know, and someone said the other day, the worst thing about all these, you know, racial politics is this, you know, need of, well, you need to, before it was just about acceptance, right? We just want to be accepted or not bothered, right? Now it's this thing of respect. want you to respect and value me. And it's all this external locus of control and external locus of searching for meaning. And when that all should be happening within yourself.
Right.
And that's why the greatest stories we have were of people, you know, Black people that weren't searching for that external validation. Booker T, Frederick Douglass, they were not searching for, they wanted to be great. And even though they faced, you know, barriers, real tangible and lawful barriers, that wasn't what they were going to sort of use to kind of create that legacy for themselves. No, the legacy happened because of their character, right? Their attitude. That's what creates a legacy. Whereas nowadays, people are trying to use the oppression to kind of find that meaning, that purpose, that legacy.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. And it's empty.
And you know what? I was thinking about the people who tend to, we'll be specific towards Black. The people who tend to talk about identity as far as being Black and get platforms and things like that, often they turn out to be scammers.
Yeah.
Often they turn out to be horrible people who are manipulating people, taking from people. They're the worst kind of people. So when I hear someone slip out of our people, and I'm just like, why did you say that? Right? What angle are you trying to get? Like, because you're someone who writes. I'm focused a lot on words. Yeah. And I'm interested in psychology, so I understand, like, people don't do things just to do things. Yeah. There's a reason behind it. So why did you feel necessary to say our people at that particular moment? Because maybe up until that point, you weren't getting the reaction that you wanted. But now if you throw in our people out there, they're like, oh, yes. Now you just elicit an emotional reaction. Why did you do that? What do you gain from doing that? And that's often what it comes down to. Someone gains from triggering that emotional response to someone noticed me, right? Someone noticed my identity. They gave me a shout out, right? And so now you feel special. Meanwhile, they get to rob from you. They get to use your identity to steal from other people. Like, I've been following this channel called Pocket Watching with JT. And he's a financial planner, but they talk about financial scams. And most of the financial scammers do this stuff. They say, I want our people to be financially literate. Meanwhile, they're teaching them how to commit fraud. They're scamming people while preaching this is to help our people, this is to do for our people. And they're actually taking money from people who look just like them, taking it from the very people that they're claiming to help. And I'm just like, that cannot be a coincidence that the people who get these platforms and do stuff like this the most often tend to be, at the very least, questionable people as far as their integrity goes. So I see that very much so as a red flag when I start seeing people saying our people and this and that, and I'm trying to do for us and all of that. And then you start looking into the background, locked up multiple times, selling drugs, doing this. Like, man, but our people, right?
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, there won't be the store if there weren't people to buy from the store, you know. And I ask myself this pretty much on a, you know, regular basis. How do these people, if it's once one falls, another one will be propped up immediately. And it doesn't matter how many times, you know, the deception sort of reveals itself, they will always find people buying it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm saying it's all about having that strong sense of self, and exactly what you said, such a simple thing, but it's the most important of why are you looking for anyone to do anything for you? That should be embarrassing. You know, I'm sorry. I know everyone is different, but And you have to ask why some people have a certain disposition and others don't. But I have been like that since as long as I want to do it myself. There's a certain pride. Now, there's a difference. Doesn't mean I don't want help or I don't want to connect or network, but I don't want handouts, in short. I don't, because then you did it for me. I don't know what situation happened. I can't remember now, but it was, I don't know if it was work or something. And someone was like, I can get you this job. And it sounded good, but it's that sense of pride or ego, whatever you want to call it. But then I'm sitting on then I started to think, it sounds nice, but then anytime I'm kind of getting somewhere or I get a promotion and, you know, it's like I owe you. I don't want to owe anyone. I want to owe myself. I want to push myself. You know, like, again, I'm saying, doesn't mean that's just a different kind of pride kind of thing. I'm just talking about myself personally. But there's some people that are always, I don't want the government to give me anything. I don't want the government to I want to have my own things. And it's like, this is not, weirdly, not a common thing nowadays, you know? So, yeah, these people will continue to find an audience because there is a space for that. There's a market for this. You know, people have been brainwashed and they've been told that, you know, they've been stolen from, right? So obviously they're always hunting for the new savior or the next thing that's going to get them out. And all the while, that savior is themselves. Sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where's the story in that, you know? What's better? Oh, someone got me here and I'm great, or most of the greatest people that are timeless heroes had the worst, you know, beginnings. I was listening to a lady. She's like, she owns a race charity in Wales. You know, she's Nigerian. I forgot her name now. And her story is so freaking remarkable, Adam. My gosh, she suffered. She suffered in this country. But I think now she works for like the European Union, if I'm not mistaken, or something European.
Yeah.
She's like, has an amazing job. And I'm thinking, why don't you use your story to inspire others? And you have these people saying, it was hard for me, so it's probably going to be impossible for you. And it's like, no, why don't you use that same, you know, experience, you know, to pass that on to people who are coming after you.
Right.
You know, it's like I always make this kind of analogy or whatever. And it's like, you know, you're stranded on an island, you know, and you kind of make it out through, you know, the rain and the storms, and you have your freedom. Why not tell people about that? And how those struggles led you to something great, instead of saying that the struggles are, you know, are the reasons why you shouldn't venture out or, you know, travel or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm enjoying this conversation, but I want to bring it to a question I've been asking just about everybody that I sit down with. Are you optimistic about the future?
In what sense?
Let's say the problems that you're most worried about, that they'll get better.
So I'm worried about race taking more space in our lives, per se. In that sense, I don't know. I don't think so. I can't see it getting better. Why? Because anytime it kind of gets better, then you have that reverse. So it's like the pendulum going back and forth with race.